Hello, everyone, and welcome to a crazy episode of Hotline League because today Riot Games dropped basically the biggest news I think they've ever dropped for esports, at least since the inception of their leagues like the LCS and such in 2013. And we have a lot to talk about. Mostly, if you look at my Twitter notifications, this is not a good decision. I've been getting a lot of feedback from CBLOL fans. So we'll talk about that. There's a bunch of other crazy things. The quick speed run here, just to get us into a good position for the episode, is Riot's consolidating into 5 regions. So even the quote unquote minor regions, there will no longer be major and minor regions. There's just 5 regions. There's a third tournament, an international tournament. Along with that consolidation, you'll have APAC all together in one region, and then the Americas in one region. You're going to have a North and South Conference. First split, there's 3 splits, 3 international events. The first split and the first international event are Fearless and LATAM getting dissolved. LCS is going to have 2 spots swapped out for a LATAM team and a guest team from Tier 2. Same thing is happening in Brazil, though they're going to also have to downsize to 8, which is not great for them because they're not already at 8. And we'll see some inter-regional play, I guess, between the North and South conferences. And that's pretty much where we're at. There's a bunch more details over on my YouTube channel if you want to take a look at that and kind of break it all down. But just speedrunning this, if you missed a whole day and you're just listening to this podcast Wednesday morning and like, what the hell happened? That's the context. Cubby, welcome to my co-host episode for this episode. How's it going? I'm losing my brain here today. I've been up since very early. How's it going?
No, it's fine. And I'm doing great, Travis. I read through some of your comments and standing in solidarity. We're now split into 2 co-hosts and 2 conferences, so I put the Brazil flag behind me.
Fantastic.
Just to get ready
yes.
for the future. You know,
You're just trying to curry favor. You're doing what the LEC
Yeah.
talent are doing, and you're just tweeting out pro-Brazil messages to try to earn sympathy votes from
Cubby, if you were
our new South
really
Conference friends.
dedicated, if you were really dedicated, you would be doing this in Portuguese.
well, I regretted I didn't tweet out the Adam Silver meme of like, get ready to learn Portuguese, buddy. I guess that's my new off season.
Yeah.
But no, I'm good. It's pretty funny. I was in Boise for CBLOL. Congrats to SLU on their championship, St. Louis University. And I realized that last May I went home, and then we had the change where NACL, kind of dissolved, or at least like what that was. And then in November, I got the news that LCS was going to 8 teams while I was in New York. And then in Boise, I got the news that this was happening. So I'm just never going to leave the house again for the best, future for the LCS. We're just going to stay here. I feel like, that's at least been kind of funny that it's every trip I've been on, something's happened. But yeah.
Yeah.
You were in Boise, Idaho?
I was. High-key a beautiful town, actually. I really enjoyed it there. I did a great hike with Corky and Andrew, a head coach from Maryville, in the morning. We saw a river merge with another one. It's like 3 miles and 2K elevation up. It was awesome. I actually highly recommend going there. It was actually really, really nice.
Well,
That's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Kelby's returning after short order because I needed somebody who could be a little more grouchy about everything and also has a ton of historical context and also knows about esports stuff. And unfortunately, Mark now works at Riot, so he's a shill. So we brought in Kelby. Kelby, how's it going?
It's going good. Back in Montreal, hanging out. And very excited to wade into this conversation because, there's a lot to talk about for sure.
And you are not currently in LA because it's much darker outside for you, which is where you were the last time you were here.
Yeah.
You've now transferred to a different time zone.
Yeah, I've gone to the better part of North America. Montreal crushes LA in every aspect. But it's nice.
And then last but certainly not least in providing the team owner perspective, and I'm really excited to see how he navigates this episode. It's none other than Steve from Team Liquid. How's it going, Steve?
Yo, what's up, everybody?
And
How's it going?
He's sporting a fresh new mustache that he YouTubed this morning.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see him sport that on this episode. I appreciate you doing that just for us.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Travis. It's great to be here.
Yeah, you were also just traveling. I saw on your Instagram that you were on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, I was in Boston, and I got invited to go and speak to two classes at Harvard Business School, which was one of the greatest highlights of my life, I think. It was just incredible. So they basically did a case study on the company about a year ago, and I went and presented to two classes, 300 students each, all underprivileged students that were accepted into Harvard. And they read the case study on Team Liquid and provided perspective and analysis and what the future strategy of the company would be, and debated that. And it was just super cool. I've never participated in something like that in my life. So, yeah, I flew out and then flew back. I got in late last night and back here in LA. So, yeah, things are good. And then, of course, like everything that we posted yesterday. So that
Yes.
was quite the whirlwind.
Yeah. Very, very expertly did that right before the subject matter has changed dramatically in the last 24 hours. Actually, I was going to ask yesterday. My understanding was that the sort of final explanation of what is happening to the LCS and the ecosystem was communicated to teams yesterday. So were you like in Boston on a call just hearing all this stuff?
I was literally in front of my laptop, and I was supposed to join the meeting with Riot, but I couldn't because we were going live with all of our posts, like Victor's post, my post. And so I was coordinating that. And then meanwhile, I had the CEO of this company that we're talking to about doing some stuff with, like sitting and waiting for me to start lunch. And so I just had too much going on, and I couldn't join. So I actually caught up on all of it this morning. So a lot of this is fresh for me. Still
Yeah.
forming my opinions.
Okay, good. Well, this is a great moment for everybody to call in and sway Steve's opinions because he has not formulated them completely. So fans will be able to express their concerns to him. Regardless, we do have a tight show because I know it's very late for Kelby. He's being very generous and staying up. I kind of I got he was originally not going to be able to do this, but I was able to cajole him into it, and I know Steve has a tight out too. So we'll move along here really quickly, but I guess I just want to establish as we get into calls here what everyone's reaction has been to all this, and we can kind of go around the horn on it. I don't know, Cubby, if you want to start off.
Oh, geez. I mean, I'm generally positive about this. I think that like whatever you think about the space, I think that like we can all agree, or at least like think about like where things are headed. We can all agree that it's probably best if something were to change. The writing was kind of on the wall, with especially here like what happened with tier two. I think that I'm excited for promotion and relegation to be back and a window into tier two. I think the conference system is interesting just because I know that we talked about America's happening on this show like a lot before and merging into a 10-team league. But it almost feels like the double conference system came from how well CBLOL has been doing as its own product. And like this is kind of the adaptation of a byproduct from that. And I'm hoping that with promotion relegation being back, I think that it opens the door to actually have some stronger partners within the league. I think that where things fell short is I think the new international tournament is an absolute like Mickey Mouse format. I'm not even talking about Fearless Draft. Just I name a good tournament that's had 5 teams in it, like in history of esports. And if you can name that to me, then I'm looking forward to actually like enjoying that tournament. But I really feel like they just slapped Fearless Draft on a really poor format that's being crammed into a week. And like LCS and CBLOL, obviously, like losing seeds to Worlds kind of stinks. But I think everything else, change is going to happen, and I would rather have this than have the Americas just like being a 10-team league here.
Yeah. Steve, how about you? I know you said you're still processing it, but what have you thought so far? And I'm sure at least some of this is not, we'd all heard sort of the rumors and what wrestlings. I'm sure that on the team side, you'd heard some changes were coming as well. So what's sort of been your thought process as you've worked through all this today?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like these changes are, from like a macro perspective, necessary for the continuity of esports being funded by Riot Games. We saw kind of esports winter happen and its effect to the creator economy and everything with esports teams and all the businesses that were kind of funded through capital during that time, and many of them ceased to exist today. But it also hit developers, and I don't have access to the financials of Riot Games, but if you trust what they're posting, they also went through it a little bit too. And so as their revenues decrease, then they have to right size their costs associated with it. And they have to think about, oh, well, how much do we invest into esports to market our game? And what is the right amount to invest? And they probably looked at it and they said, we have built too big of an ecosystem to support the amount of revenue that we're receiving at this time. And so we need less mouths to feed globally. We need to reduce the footprint that we've created, and that will kind of ensure that we feel good about the amount of money that is spent to promote their game through esports. And so from that kind of macro perspective, I think that kind of right sizing to get to a sustainable point is probably very healthy for all of us, so that League of Legends esports continues to be around. Within each of the respective changes, there's some pros and cons. It's going to hit the CBLOL and a number of the teams that will cease to exist. And I don't know enough about the distribution of fan base in that region. Like in North America, there was a number of free riding teams. I hate to say it, but I'm just going to be direct. Like some of the teams needed to go. Like they weren't doing anything. I don't know if that works that way in CBLOL. I just don't know enough about the region. I don't know if there are free riding teams. I don't know what the fan distribution is. I don't know what the average minute audience is for each of the teams. Like, I don't know the size of the fan bases, and like if reducing that number of teams actually will significantly affect viewership of the product. I don't know. So the impact of that, and then also in North America, like, can we lose a few more teams? I think we'll be fine. I want organizations and companies that are invested for the future of this, and there are some really good management. There's some really good companies that invest in content and players and competition and all this stuff. And there's those that don't. And I want to be surrounded by people that give a shit. And so I think less is more in that case. And so I'm excited about that. In terms of the new event, we'll see. I mean, I love more trophy moments. I love more competition, but will it be fun to watch? Like, we're about to find out.
Yeah.
At the beginning of Q1. So hopefully it's good. And then from a financial perspective, putting my business hat on, they just moved from the LRP to the GRP. The GRP is basically like a revenue share across all leagues and all teams. Yeah, I think they had something like 77 teams that are in the league globally. Like, that's getting reduced down to some new number. I don't know what it is. Let's say it's 50. Well, you have less teams now receiving a portion of the GRP. Well, each of the payments should go up, right? So it also just makes it more sustainable. So I think all of that is kind of healthy from an economic perspective as well.
And before I toss over to Kelby to get his take, two things I do want to address. One, I've seen some people saying like, "Hey, are you going to get a Brazilian perspective on the show?" Hotline League has always been a North American perspective show where we're talking about LCS and the impact of all that stuff. I did reach out to a Brazil personality today that I'm friends with this morning. From what I have heard, and for interesting context on this, a lot of the Brazil personalities came out, and they were basically like, "Hey, we don't think this is that bad, based off of what it could have been and what we've been hearing." And then that fan base has basically been like, "You guys are all in Riot's pocket," and I think they're undercover for a little bit. So I do hope to do something with them in a little bit, but I think for the time being, some of the Brazil personalities, they're keeping their head down on some of the stuff. So I do hope to do some content with them separately to learn a little bit about the sort of Brazilian take on this. But that does not mean that we can't have Brazilian callers on the show tonight. And speaking of
I already
callers,
pulled one.
Cubby, do you want to explain how the show works? Because I think we have a lot of people who are new to the show.
Wow, you're just gonna skip over Kelby like that? All right.
No, I'm giving you a chance to like throw this in before we go back to Kelby, so that we can parallel path the callers getting in while Kelby is going.
All right.
Cubby, it would be great if you could also give these instructions in Portuguese for our Portuguese audience.
I'm gonna get Rafa to come in here and like do it in Spanish, man. That's next actually. It's gonna be full service here.
Yeah.
For
the
if you guys want to call in, go to discord.gg/Travis or type in command Discord in either YouTube or Twitch. You guys can join the Discord, read the rules, accept, and then at Cubby with your takes. If it's good, I'll pull you in the waiting room, and then we'll grab callers from there. We do have a couple scheduled callers already. Some celebrities that'll be calling in to give their takes. Should be fun. But yeah.
Yep. Kelby,
I will. Just,
go ahead, Steve.
I will just one quick comment. We have a facility in Sao Paulo, Brazil, 30,000 square foot facility. We built a pretty large fan base in Brazil. I think considered by many, we're probably the third largest brand that operates in esports there. And I, before the show, asked some folks to just kind of like look online and consolidate some of the comments from our socials with regards to this. And I, in no means am I trying to represent the interests of an entire region, but some of the comments were focused on a comparison to VCT and how VCT is doing in Brazil, and that this model is moving to the Valorant model. And that worries them because of their perception of what the Valorant model looks like currently in Brazil. And there's a lot of confusion about that and what it means, and discussion on it. So I just bring that kind of point up from our side.
Kelly, what do you think of all this?
I thought I was gonna come in and have some hot takes, and now they just seem very lukewarm. So I would say that I agree with a great majority of the sentiments that Steve expressed. Not to reiterate his talking points, I'll maybe talk about some of the things that we haven't talked about yet that I'm personally interested in. One, Cubby, I understand, maybe you weren't a Battle of the Five Gods fan, but there's one event that I could think of that was like a cool esports tournament with 5 different competitors that I really liked. I do like more international events. As you said in your video, Travis, I love the rights. Like, we're listening. And yeah, it feels like we've been asking for this for a long time. I also am I'm not well educated on it, but I am very personally interested in Fearless Draft. For a split in a format. I have for a long time expressed my disdain with champion variety at the highest level of competition, and how I feel like pick and draft can become kind of stagnant and boring. I would also say that, like, from a narrative perspective, I really like the kind of North versus South League competition that is being established as kind of like a mini international competition and deciding factor for the number of teams that will qualify to Worlds. I think that NA and Brazil have not had a lot of opportunities to really feel international success. And this is an opportunity for them to kind of get interregional competition and now potentially a strong rivalry with a good percentage of the Brazilian audience feeling like NA is taking something from them. Maybe Riot has like 5-headed this and like created a rivalry between these two regions in this new format. And I'm interested to see those teams compete against each other for spots that are meaningful. Whereas I feel like, otherwise, in particular for Brazil, when you look at them attending international events, maybe the number of teams that are going to these international events and the new formats will allow for them to have better chance for playing in more meaningful matches there, which is, a positive for the region, in my opinion. So I'm interested to see how all of this plays out, but definitely agree that change was needed. And the one thing I guess I would add to Steve's comments is like, guys, I know that a lot of League fans just pay attention to League. Historically, you have to remember Riot has been far and away leading the space and providing more support for the esports ecosystem in League of Legends than any other game. They have more data and more information than all of, like, I love seeing Reddit comments and people just being like, oh, they should have done this and that. And like, dude, they have so much more information and so much experience running this global ecosystem. They are the people who are best informed. And ultimately, it is by their grace that this entire thing exists. I'm not saying that obviously esports doesn't provide value back to that company. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it, right? It's not a purely charitable effort. But it's obvious that for business reasons, there are changes that needed to be made in order for this thing to be sustainable. I trust that this company is making these changes, in particular in a region like Brazil, where they have seen a lot of viewership success and stuff recently, for a good reason, right? So we will see. We will see how it all plays out.
It is so funny because a lot of people in the chat are like, man, this guy's just sucking up to Riot so hard. He's like such,
You know me. I'm a big Riot apologist.
And it's so funny because, like, oh man, Kelby is one of the most critical people of Riot that I know, and is frequently that on the show, which I guess is like a good segue into what I think has happened. There is, what I have seen is a huge disconnect between the sort of personalities and industry people and the audience. And I've been trying to reconcile this today because, for instance, I think in my video, I said something like, I think this is like probably maybe mostly good, even though there's like a lot of terrible things that are coming along with it, so I'll just say it now. Like, it is really shitty that a lot of people are going to lose jobs. There's a bunch of downsizing that's happening. LATAM is disappearing. If you are a LATAM fan, it probably feels fucking miserable to know that like 2 of your teams will survive, and they will just be surviving by being in completely different regions and different leagues. And so there's miserable stuff that is going on. And I do think that like a lot of people, including myself, have not done the best job of acknowledging the impact that this is having on a lot of fans and also people who are just working in the industry. So it's important to get that out. But I also think that part of the disconnect has been from a lot of people who see this and are like, why should I be excited about this? And I think that is a perfectly reasonable thing to think. If you are a Brazil fan and you learn that like a bunch of teams are leaving, and now you're being forced into this relationship, I guess, with the LCS, which is a league you don't really care about probably, why should you be excited about this? Maybe you get a little bit of extra representation at international events, but one of the things that I saw that I really respected today on social media from a lot of Brazilian fans was this idea of like, we don't watch CBLOL because we're here to watch them try to kick ass on the world stage. Like, that's not how this goes. We watch it because we like to see our teams play each other. And now we're going to have less of that, and now we're going to be thrown into this situation where we have to have our teams play against a league we don't care about. So I think all that stuff is very valid. I think part of the reason why the disconnect has occurred is that many of the people in the space have been expecting something for a while, because I think a lot of people knew that this was very unsustainable. And so a lot of us were like, oh, wow, we were expecting LCS and Brazil to just merge and run out of the LCS studio the same way that Valorant does it, and it's going to feel miserable and shitty. And then this comes out and you're like, okay, for the most part, like, while Brazil is losing teams, and that's shitty, and I want to keep saying I get it, like, a lot of the day-to-day of the experience for these fans will not have changed. Like, you will continue to be able to watch your teams play against each other. There will be these like moments where they come together. And so I think for a lot of us, we're like, oh, that's not as bad as we thought. And we get this extra international event. and okay, like things are not as miserable. But that has now created a dynamic where a lot of people, like Kelby, for instance, who I think is known oftentimes to be very critical of Riot or very sarcastic or frustrating with the company, is put in a position where the audience is looking at him and being like, wow, you're just sucking up to Riot Games, you're corporate overlords, blah, 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 blah. And so I just like it is a fascinating time for me a little bit to sit on the sidelines, and I've had my own share of people calling me a shill or whatever over the years, or in fact, ironically, in the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of people comments on Hotline League saying Travis is too negative, I can't watch the show anymore. And so to sort of see it play out on a grand scale, where even like LS is excited about these changes, and he's just getting shit on social media. LS will be joining us later on the episode. By the way, he's going to give a call in. We talked to him a little bit beforehand, so. I just think that stuff is interesting. And then the only other thing I want to address, you know what, I'm sure we'll get a call on it later, but I do think it is fascinating to me. I would have never predicted. I had a lot of different ideas on what could happen, what wouldn't have happened. I would have never expected that Brazil is just like at war with the LCS. Like the amount of fuck LCS pictures and all the stuff I've gotten, and they wholly blame the LCS for decisions that were made on the global side, and that I don't think that the LCS team was probably. I don't think Mark was like, guys, I just got the job. We're fucking merging with Brazil. That's my plan, baby. So it's just been fascinating to see all that play out. But I'm glad that we did the little round circle here, and I know we could all keep talking for a long time between the four of us, but I do want to make sure we're getting into calls and getting stuff going. Just as a fun note, I do have a cool announcement for the show later on, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But we're going to take a couple calls in first. But there's some cool TGI news hitting the show later on. So, Cubby, how goes the caller situation?
There's been so many takes, and I've been very light on what we're taking so far, but I had a couple in the tank. If we want to get to callers.
Yeah, go ahead and grab
all right
the first one.
By the way, if you guys want to call in again, discord.gg/Travis if you want to join and give your take. Yep. I have not pulled a lot of takes. I know that I kind of want to have it. I usually pull a few more, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll slow roll it tonight so that people can get in. And then I will try to, we're getting a ton of subs and memberships. Thank you, Big Angry Hobo, Bug Juice over on YouTube. We have on Twitch, I saw a whole bunch of people sending subs. Gotcha J, Not Hypersonic Hero, Notorious Bubble, Guest Monster, Robert Bruce, Let Go My Lego, Slowbro, Dasher, Big Angry Hobo over there, Cleoca Queen, Zero, thank you for the 5 gifted subs, Green, Servaday, The Devious One. We're getting, I just got an alert on Discord that we have unusual join activity detected in the channel. So hopefully our Discord mods are keeping an eye on making sure there's nothing weird happening there.
I got the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting something is up. We'd be under siege a little bit tonight, so we'll see what ends up happening. Anyways, Boggles is here. Boggles, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Winnipeg, Canada.
Winnipeg, Canada.
For all the American people, just above North Dakota and Minnesota, kind of in the middle of this.
Fantastic.
It's forgotten.
What do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, so basically to try and summarize kind of the bit of my take. So while my initial reaction was that these changes seem bad, I'm actually kind of convinced I think long-term this will be good for North American esports. I can't talk on the CBLOL thing as I don't have any stake there, but for North America, I think this is long-term good. So kind of just to go over the points quickly, while losing the jobs seems bad, it seems like from a financial reason, from the little I know, it seems like this might have to happen. While the rivalries kind of seems weird, the idea of like a Canada, America, Mexico versus the rest of kind of like South America rivalry doesn't really exist right now. Once we actually start to play against them, I think it will actually build storylines and real rivalries will come. Like rivalries don't come from just naturally already existing, like they come from history, and this will allow the history to get built. We just need to like take like a year or two for that to happen. And then, however, in order to actually like make this succeed long term, I think Tier 2 needs to get heavily invested in for me, because while like kind of coming from my own personal thing, I am envious of the European Tier 2 scene, because I always try to watch, I think it's called EU Masters, right? Whenever I see it on Twitch, I always make sure to watch it. as somebody who's not too dialed into League, but try to make sure I watch it. If we can succeed in growing tier 2, I think that will actually enable us to reintroduce teams or add in more promotion relegation slots to this current model. And I think that growth would be really good. And it allows for niche teams to get created. So an example I could think of would be like a Moist Esports getting into League, or regional teams. As I know how much people love to talk about regional teams, I don't think they can really exist as like a, what's the word, franchised team. But I do think if you're to allow them to come to the tier 2 system to tier 1, we can actually get, say, a Canadian team make it to the northern region.
So I don't want to go
like
too far down the tier 2 rabbit hole, because I think we'll probably have another call about sort of the promotion stuff, and it's a big thing. But I do want to take, what's very funny is again, people think, oh, we're going to chill out. I think what's funny is I really disagree with your take. I think there's a good chance that this is good long term. I disagree that rivalries and stuff will start to develop. I will say the Brazilian audience is doing a good job of right now creating a reason for the North and South Conference to have strong feelings towards each other. But my concern has been that Brazil has been underfunded and has not been able to keep up with North America in the past, as North America has poured a decent amount of resources into acquiring talent and developing all this stuff. And unfortunately, Brazil has not been in the position to be able to do something like that. And so I worry that a lot of this stuff is going to feel anti-competitive, or not competitive, I guess I should say, between these teams.
You're helping build the rivalry.
Yeah, you're contributing to it right now.
I mean, and I'm not, and it's really shitty because I think a lot of I get it.
In plain English,
how do you know this to be a fact?
Because of history, Steve. Like Brazil.
What is
Brazil has not necessarily been competitive on the world stage. They've had really great standout moments, which Kelby and I will both remember. But
isn't that the same for North America?
Yes, but I don't think that Brazil and North America have a strong rivalry, or there's a long history of Brazil taking out North America. And so, Steve, do you really think we're going to send teams to CBLOL and we're going to get crushed by them? Or even that the matches are going to be do you think Team Liquid versus the number 1 seed from CBLOL is going to be massively competitive?
Maybe not from the jump, but perhaps over time.
And they're competing for a world slot now. And as we've said, there is a contingent of Brazilian fans that are now rightly or wrongly, fuck LCS, they took this from us. So now we just stomp them. And like you said in your video, Travis, APA or JoJo or somebody is like, why did I even fly to face these trash players? This is not worth my time. That builds the fire, right? Especially I feel like with the passion that we've seen from Brazilian fan bases and other titles and stuff, I do not think it is impossible that properly motivated, they could put together a team that could lose to a North American squad and actually, or be competitive in a series. I think they are closer to us than we are to China and Korea.
Yeah, that's not a hot take. I agree with that.
It's also a low bar.
Yeah.
There's a pretty big gap right now.
I don't know. I'm going to fucking see David tweets at the end of Split 2, and he's going to be like, this is the year. We're doing it. 100 Thieves has the team. We're getting out of groups. We're getting to semis.
Yeah, I don't think David Shynock is representative of the general sentiment about skill levels between teams and regions.
I mean, the interesting discussion to have here is what happens, because I'm just going to assume that the import rule will not exist between these two conferences. So, what happens if you have players that maybe fall out of the ecosystem? Like Dignitas made a team with 4 names that were not playing in LCS last split that historically have been quite good. What happens if, you get a team from the other conference that ends up picking up some of these players and you actually have some migration between conferences, and then over time, things get closer. I think that given what the setup is, I think people will see opportunity to head to both conferences as a player. I think that's something that's going to be really interesting to see.
I hate that. That's so dude. You think Brazilian fans are mad now? Wait
Yeah.
until North
Yeah.
American like rejects, quote unquote, are falling down into the Brazil scene, Cubby. Like I know I can't say this because Steve's on the show, so Steve, listen, cover your ears. But like the whole import situation and the churn within our player base has been such a huge issue over the course of the last several years. I think in terms of having of fandom and popularity associated with the LCS. And if Brazil ends up in a world where like their fan favorite players are getting pushed out because we have players falling out of our 8th team and into CBLOL, oh my god, that's going to be such a disaster. Maybe the teams will just face such pushback that they won't want to do that, but like, that is a terrifying thing to think about, especially given the response today.
I mean, if your argument is that they're not competitive now, like, what are they going to do to be competitive, right? I mean, I think that CBLOL, like, given that they're going to be in the same ecosystem, I can only see them scaling over time. I do think that that is one way where, in theory, you have a bigger talent pool. Also, they're not an import anymore. Like, if you're on the NA server and you're going over there, does that count as an import slot when you're playing in the same league in the same conference? So, like, by that margin, it's not the case.
Guys, I know they have players from other regions that are in CBLOL already.
Yeah.
But I was responding to what Cubby said, which is there won't be any import restrictions between the two conferences, or his speculation that there won't be, which would mean that you could literally run a team in the CBLOL which has like 3 North American talent and 2 Korean talent, for instance, and that is, I think, the issue that would make people unhappy in Brazil.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, like, what is going to drive viewership? One of those things is social engagement. And our experience with Brazilian fans is just the nationalistic kind of conviction that exists in rooting for teams, right? And how loud that is on social, and how, I mean, we saw that with all the fuck LCS stuff, immediately afterwards. Like, that's going to bring a new energy socially that is going to be engaging with North American players. That is going to create narratives and drama. This is maybe reminiscent of early esports for LCS, when NA was getting most of its viewership based on bullshit, like fighting, clips, people talking trash, like just that, it wasn't, yes, competitiveness and skill and watching the best teams is part of it. You're right, Travis, but it's not all of it. Like, we were the most watched region, like LCS, way before LEC, and we were a worse region, but everybody wanted to watch it because Doublelift was talking shit on stream afterwards, right? And like, so this, don't discount like the the tabloid nature associated with what will become of these two regions. Just because it hasn't happened before doesn't mean it won't happen when it launches in 25. I think it will, is my guess.
Yeah.
I think that will improve viewership. I think it will improve social interactivity. And I think it will lead to more nationalism for Brazil and League of Legends.
I definitely got a lot of social interactivity today from our new South Conference friends.
Well, you're going to get more after the show based on what you just said, too. So.
No, I think Steve's going to get more from after the show because here's, I don't know, Kelby, how much you've waded into the reaction, I guess I'll say, on Twitter.
I have not waded super deep.
Okay, no. So the from what I have been able to see based off my own replies, the Brazil fans blame LCS for this. They think that there's like 2 things that have happened. One, that we have mismanaged our league to a point where we need Brazil to like save us or take the hit for us, essentially. Like the concept on their end is CBLOL is thriving, viewership has been growing, everything is great. How do we get rewarded for this? Well, we fucking lose our teams and we get forced into a partnership with LCS, which they perceive to be a toxic asset. I can understand why
they just haven't thought for like 5 seconds beyond that initial reaction and why this might have happened. But yes, go on.
And so, and I understand, and I think from my feeling, that is a misunderstanding of what is happening. Like, they're looking at the CBLOL LCS relationship, and they're not necessarily looking at what's happening in APAC, what is happening with international events, which now have far less teams at them. Like, the whole scene is condensing. But they think that like LCS is like forcing this situation to try to like save the league. And then we just have
Yes.
Steve, who's a team owner, being like, I think this is great. We're going to get these guys in and they're going to be super engaged and all this stuff. And so I feel that's why I think Steve's going to take the heat from the. Well, we should just, at the end of this, we should do a poll or like a channel point bet on which one of us gets the most engagement, I guess, on social media after this episode.
They think Steve is like conspiring to be like, hey, you know what would really save our league if we merged with CBLOL? Yes.
That's why they've got the
like,
training facility there already,
You're so Steve. You played your hand too obvious. Okay, they saw you coming.
It's true, but like every region is reducing the size of their league. It's not like CBLOL is getting the short end of the stick.
Or
right?
are China and Korea? I didn't think they were.
I don't technically like the LEC stuff has already happened where that whole region is kind of merged into each other, like the European stuff. But I don't think other regions are getting teams cut in this way. Like, sorry, none of the other like quote unquote major regions are getting teams cut. Like LEC is just
when
rolling
you say
forward.
other,
LCK.
You were using the liberal, anyways.
I'm talking about like LEC,
Like
LCK,
VCS is bye-bye,
Yeah.
Like LOA is pretty much bye-bye. I think the backlash is just the fact that like, I mean, perhaps CBLOL, like they built a product that everyone's really invested in. And we're seeing that firsthand today, right? And they're experiencing the cut that like in one like 6-month span that LCS experienced in the past year and a half. Or past year, like if you think about it that way. Not to mention like the chopping down of the tier 2 system as well. So I think it stinks for them because they see like their league ramping up as itself. But I mean, for me, again, like you're giving your league more legitimacy. And I'm saying this not to like, like take away from like the jobs that are going to be lost from this, but you get to fight for an extra world spot. You get to fight against the LCS, like, which may not be like the huge product, the number one product it was, but it's still a very competitive region. Like, I think in the long run, the potential for competition here is way bigger than just being on your own and going to international events. I know they don't care about that, but what if you fucking win? Like, it gets more fun the more you win. You have more opportunities to win with this, Like, I think that like this will fix itself over time.
Yeah. CBLOL's experience on the international stage has been play-ins and bomb out, and they might actually have meaningful matches now and more teams due to new formats and stuff like that. So like they could play KRCN, like, which it's totally fair if they say we don't give a single fuck about that. We only care about our domestic competition, but maybe give it a shot, see how it feels, and you might feel differently.
I don't know, Kelby. I think that I mean, I see it in the chat right now. It's like we don't care about that. We want our teams, and that's it. Like I think Brazil seemed to go in the opposite direction of LCS, right? In that LCS has struggled to be competitive on the international stage. Maybe we have been just competitive enough to constantly get our hopes up or get excited, when we see Team Liquid in the finals at MSI and that type of stuff. I think Brazil a long time ago was like, and this is my perception based especially off of what I've seen today. Like they just hyper invested in domestic regional play. And so every time that we say like, oh, this is a chance to get better on the international stage or here's more opportunities, I think they're constantly like, we don't want that. And like no one is listening to what we want. And we're just getting this thrust on us. And so whenever everybody's like, no, you should just try this. You should just try it. Like, I think that for them, they're like, fuck you. Like, I love my region and I love my league. And that is getting undermined by a bunch of stuff that I don't actually care about. And so I can understand why it is really aggravating whenever you see people be like, but wait, because all of us think like if tomorrow we found out North America was getting more slots and more international competition, all that stuff, we would all be excited about it because that is sort of what North America has aimed for, is this international competition stuff. So I don't know.
Well, and I was gonna say I'll drop it after this. Yeah. I think that resonates with me a lot, Travis, because that I have been saying for a long time that North America needs to be less invested in and care less about the international narrative and be more focused on the domestic narrative, because I don't see success for us on the international stage coming anytime soon. And like, yeah, us getting more slots doesn't make any sense to me. But I am proposing a silver lining, because as we are looking at, Riot is not looking at, I'm going to make a statement on Riot's behalf that I feel confident in stating. Riot is not looking at the growth in viewership at CBLOL and saying, hey, I want to stunt or potentially damage this by taking away teams and investment in this. That is not something that they are doing lightly. It is a reality, as a product of the economic sustainability of this ecosystem that I'm sure was very arduous and difficult for them to arrive at that decision. But if it has to come, what are the positives that can be taken?
And that pisses off Brazil fans even more, because they hear like that leads into the belief that like they looked at the numbers, see LCS failing, and think we have to shore up LCS with CBLOL. That's the like perception that I've seen online.
They wanted to do that, they would have merged it completely.
Right, and one viewer in North America is not worth the same as one viewer in a different region. You know what I mean? Like every viewer
and to be clear,
differently.
Kelby's talking specifically about sponsorship value.
Yes, the monetization of those viewers are not the same across different regions, which is why you have different CPMs paid out on Twitch and YouTube for different regions and stuff like that. It's just the economic realities of it.
You know, to the point on the economic realities, I have a question. Maybe somebody knows this, but what is the average stipend or the amount of subsidy that is provided by Riot Games to each of the teams in CBLOL? I don't know what that number is, but there is a number probably. And then what is that number to each organization in the new GRP model with less teams in the in that conference, in the South Conference? My guess, but I don't know this to be true, is that the amount of financial support for the remaining teams will go up in 2025 from what it was in 2024. If that is the case, then those teams will have more resources to invest into competitiveness, infrastructure, acquiring talent, so on and so forth. This should stimulate the region for those teams that remain in the league. And perhaps there may be a few teams that are going to exit that weren't providing as much value because it's a very top-heavy nature, and that just exists in every league.
All right. Boggles, I know we've gone all over the place here, but I don't know if you have anything that you would add to the conversation here at the end, or if we thought we missed anything. I know we didn't dive into your tier 2 stuff, but
the tier 2 stuff I think is fine for another day, like especially if another caller may touch on it. But in general, for me, it's just like I think the potential for more rivalries and I guess kind of quasi-nationalistic stuff between like Brazil and America can provide like a lot of hope. And for me, while I'm not sure the state of the economics of CBLOL or how people at least perceive it to be, this at least makes me hopeful for the future of the LCS. Because while I was like a semi tuned in fan, this makes me want to be more tuned in when this change happens. Because at least they're doing something new now.
Yeah, and I think I'm spending a lot of time on this episode trying to like make sure, ironically, even though they've been angry with me all day, that like the CBLOL fan experience and their perspective is not lost in all of this. But I do think you're completely valid for being an LCS fan that is just like, hey, I'm excited about what I saw today and what I heard about, and I think that's like a good thing that makes me more excited for the future. I think that's completely fine for you to feel that way. So I know there's a lot of people online who are frustrated about this, or people that will shout you down, but I'm glad that you were able to share that perspective. Is there anything that you want to add here as a shout out or anything here at the end?
I guess as a shout out, happy to see you're getting more and more into MTG. Like it's cool to me to see kind of esports slowly kind of just see like the professionals in the industry like play it. Like I think there was a pre-release at 100 Thieves, right, for Modern Horizons. And just as with my namesake Boggles being from an MTG card, Slippery Boggle, it's just cool to kind of see Magic grow lately and kind of see worlds that I have kind of collide between the Magic scene and the esports scene. So
Thank you.
that's
Yeah.
about it.
The first ever Magic thing I went to was at Team Liquid, and Steve was there. And then he's accepted every Magic invite I've sent to him since and has not arrived at any of them. So it's not just 100 Thieves that supports. It's Steve who supports it in his facility, even if he can't be there physically because he runs into some emergency situation every time. Thanks so much, Boggles, for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
All right.
I deserve that. I deserve that. That is true.
Steve, I will see Steve posting about how excited he is to go on a trip, for a business trip, or that he's going to Mexico for a weekend or something. And I'll see this 30 minutes after seeing he's accepted an invite to a Magic event that very weekend. It's very impressive. All right. So I think what we're going to do is, Steve, if you want to go, speaking of Steve, you can go grab a monster or something, because I have a fun, exciting announcement that we're going to be making right now on the show. While we get our next caller, who, spoiler, will be LS, queued up. So let me see if I can get this all going. But for many of you, you may have known that it's been a quiet few months on the sponsorship front, and we've been working on something for quite some time, and I'm really excited to announce it right now. Here, I have a fun video. We'll see if I set this up and it plays and everything's good. But here we go. We are so back. That's right. LCS Summer 2024 is starting off, and I am not alone and joining up because I've got an amazing partner in Kia. That's right. Kia, I'm so thrilled to announce, is coming on board as a sponsor for the entire summer split for Travis Gafford Industries. You're going to be seeing them across a ton of coverage. And of course, I'm not the first person in the space to be sponsored by them. In fact, they've been sponsoring the LCS since the beginning of the year and multiple LCS teams. So it's fantastic to see them just be such a great partner and supporter of League of Legends esports, and I'm thrilled to be a part of that. Throughout Summer Split, you're going to hear me talking about them a lot, and especially their EV9. Their EV9 is an amazing all-new, all-electric 3-row SUV with 5,000 pounds of towing, next-level tech with widescreen display panels, and 800-volt ultra-fast DC charging. This vehicle seats up to 7 adults, has an onboard power generator which can help you use your EV9 as a power source, and has 6.8-inch ground clearance. What's more, in the coming weeks, I'm going to get a chance to drive the EV9 myself, and we're going to be recording that whole thing, so stay tuned for vlogs in the near future. Legitimately, I'm just so happy to see Kia supporting esports content at a time like this. I hope all of you are too. They truly are making it possible for me to make this content for all of you, so please join me in supporting them as they support me this split. Thanks again, Kia, for the sponsorship. Looking forward to more coverage in 2024 Summer Split. Oops, I'm muted. Shout out to Kia for joining up as a sponsor of Hotline League and our LCS summer coverage. You're going to see them in some surprise test content and some other fun stuff that we're doing, including a series where we talk to folks about where they get their inspiration. So I'm really excited to have them on as a partner. It's fantastic. We've been working on this for a long time, and it's so cool to see what they've done in the space since they've entered. So thank you to Kia, and their logo has conveniently appeared between me and Kelby, so he can balance that logo on his head throughout the rest of the show. Oh, it's great to have them on as a partner. It feels so good to have. It's been a bit, folks, so it's really good to be able to have a logo on the screen throughout this episode. All right, enough about that. We should have our next caller joining up here in just a second. I will message him to tell him to join a channel.
I've been on the lookout.
Please. We'll pull you.
Congrats to Travis, by the way, on the Kia partnership.
Hey, congrats to us. It's the sponsor of our show.
No, congrats to Travis. I had minimal things to do with this, as in nothing. But it's pretty awesome to have.
Well, we can't do the show without you, Cubby. So you had a lot to do with it.
I appreciate that, Travis.
While we wait for LS to join a voice channel, and Cubby will be on the alert for him. We have a lot of people in the channels today, so shout out to Rage Cakey, PP Doc, Big Angry Hobo for gifting to a Narrow, Moonfish, Suyo, SLC Soy Boy, Shonatonin gifted to LS, Hustbust, Linus Collin, Casson Point, Yoser, Dagami, Devious One, And some more folks. Rage Cakey, Big Angry Hobo gifted to Liquid, Steve, Hung Step Bro, Snow Leopard with the $10 super chat, Basil Leaf with the $5 super chat, Oh Honey with 5 gifts over on YouTube. How are we going? Have we located LS yet?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna finish reading these off, and then if he's not here, then come LS. Okay. Thank you to Haru, Director Donut, Spud Tugger, Fisham Olsen, Tennis Guru, Bowen Chung for the 500 bits, Fenron Jenkins with the 77 months. I just want to say my whole opinion on the situation is Kelby's the best. There we go. All right. We have... Okay, Cubby's grabbing
Fenron
LS
losing
right
his
now.
Portuguese audience.
What'd you say?
I said Fenron losing his Portuguese audience. You hate to see it.
True. Killer Canuck, thank you for the 7 months. Yon Star with 71 months. He's still here. Aerohydrus, Zerthon, Yakman, Gold Knight, Heart of Kyber, Tidy Cats Marketing, Element with the 5 gifted, Meek Rhino, and Shauna Tonin gifted a sub to Silvix. All right, Cubby's in the other channel, has been with LS. I'm stalling as long as I can. They must be figuring out some sort of audio issue, and then he should be here in a second. Steve, you're in the office right now, yeah?
Yeah, I am.
In the Alienware training facility?
Yeah, the Alienware training facility. Yep.
Yes. How has the team? Have you had a chance to see the team preparing for the start of the split this coming week?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. It's feeling good.
I'm gonna be spending some time. Yeah, they're doing great. Yeah, they're really good. They're in great spirits. I will say, like, I've been doing this for like 10 years, and like the camaraderie between these players is like nothing I've ever seen. Like, they just hang out, they talk shit, they're just constantly joshing with one another. It's just like they're almost like a little clique, you know? So it's good vibes.
That's awesome.
What is APA's balance between solo queue and type racer?
I don't know. Does he do a lot of type racer?
Well, he just means the typing and the
must.
all chat typing. He's got to get the typing quick, you know.
I didn't follow that. Okay.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah, he does talk a lot of shit.
All right, it appears our caller is here. Caller, what is your name and where are you calling from?
LS, I'm calling from South Korea.
LS from South Korea. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
What do you like to talk about tonight? What is your take?
I don't know what take necessarily. I mean, obviously, I tweeted that I think that this move is really good, and I think that it's in the best interest of the longevity of LoL esports, and I think that it also shows that Riot actually cares. And it's a fiesta on Twitter. So.
It is rough out there. People do not want you voicing pro opinions on this topic. I will say that. But maybe you can. I know you tweeted your thoughts, and I think you said you're doing a video as well. But maybe you can give us your sort of quick perspective on all this. You know, what is it about all these changes that you're enjoying?
Well, I think that if LCS were to fall, right, which I think that that is something that like was maybe being projected, I think that it leads to a domino effect. And that is also why I was against like a lot of the LEC people in the past cheering for like LCS's viewership demise, was because if LCS goes under, then ultimately other regions would, follow suit eventually, because dominoes, and we've seen this in other esports. Other things that I think some people don't know about is that there's other regions that have asked for mergers, or not mergers, but equivalencies like this. To be able to pull in other regions to their league, or to be able to do conferences like this, which other major regions are asking for it. But this also isn't public yet, which is like crazy, where, it seems like Brazil is very upset that LCS is the one, obviously, for the first time it's being announced. I think it's really good for a lot of reasons, because financially it seems like the ecosystem of League isn't sustainable. And we see like the Saudi money starting to come in right now, and we see other problems arising. And so the condensing of teams is really good, I think, on a financial aspect. And yes, obviously a lot of jobs get lost, which is the downside to this. The upside, with some of the jobs being lost, though, is that tier 2 actually finally gets paid attention to, whereas right now it's kind of not. Some teams do pay attention to tier 2. So I think in that regard, it's good. And I think that from a media perspective, this does a really good thing, the conference stuff, where I think Steve mentioned it earlier on the show. I was in a game, so I was not totally catching everything that was being said, but I think the conferences stuff, I think that there can be some fan stuff that does eventually get created. And I think he said nationalism, but I think patriotism is more apt, but maybe I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, these are pretty much my stances.
What what is it? You mentioned a little bit this idea that you're excited about the rivalry, the condensing of regions together in a way that kind of strengthens them. You said you've heard that this is something that other regions might have been asking for a bit. What is it about that you think is helpful for the space?
Well, I think it I mean, so the analogy that I used on Twitter and that I used in the video that I ended up making was I used like the WWE analogy where, Raw versus SmackDown, where you create factions. And then people obviously grow attached to certain personas and personalities from those factions. And it creates natural storylines just because of the existence of it, right? I mean, we see this in other games or fictional, things, Harry Potter. There's the 4 schools or whatever, academies, right? Magic the Gathering, 5 different colors. These types of things, right? It creates a different type of natural fandom. And you can say that it already exists fundamentally, LCS, CBLOL, etc. But when they clash more regularly than often, and there's a tournament in which they go against each other, I think that there's more benefit to it and that it further incentivizes more fandom. And I think that that's really good. And again, like the condensing and stuff also means that it does become harder to be a pro in those regions because naturally the teams are going to be more competitive. And because the teams are going to be more competitive and it's going to be better, and I think someone mentioned it earlier on the show, you do get to play against China and Korea now, whereas maybe you didn't before if you were a wildcard region or something. What that does end up doing is you get to look at it and be like, well, okay, now our teams are a lot better. And when your teams are a lot better and the gameplay is better, you can do, I think, more things media-wise and social media-wise and branding-wise. And like, I think that it just overall helps the space. But I think a lot of people are really latching on to the negatives, which is just the loss of certain jobs. But I would say that this is equivalent to like what, pruning or something, right? Where you have to cut shrubs in order to make them grow larger or like better. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what is fair to say probably is that Riot, they were a little too ambitious, in 2013 or whatever. I think right now we're currently at like 9 regions, but I'm pretty sure when we started we were at like 16 within the first couple of years. There were obviously the big 4, but then you had a whole lot of other regions like OS, which does not exist anymore, others like that. And so what we're seeing is sort of the natural results of, hey, like this did not grow the way that they expected it to, and the revenue did not grow the way that they expected to, and so now we are here, which sucks, and a lot of people are being impacted, but it does make sense that this is what's happened. Have you had a chance to see too much of the Korean or LCK fan response to a lot of this? Because I know, like, obviously we're seeing a ton of the reaction from both North America and CBLOL, but I'm curious how people are feeling about this stuff internationally.
Let me search it right now. I mean, I can search. I gotta read though in Korean.
Well, while you do that, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, while us is searching, I can definitely understand, Travis, that while in retrospect, Riot was too ambitious with like all those regions and stuff like that. Do we think in hindsight that we would say, knowing what we know now, we wouldn't have liked them to take the chance? Like they made a big bet, and I think it's commendable, at least, that they were willing to think and push for something that large. and it didn't work out, but people got the opportunity, and we had those regions had their moments and chances that they might not have otherwise gotten if we just never decided to do it.
I just
You know
want
what
to
I mean?
apologize to the viewers. I did not realize I was bringing on such a Riot shill on this episode who was just going to be hyping up Riot Games the whole time. No, I a lot of people like to do the hindsight 2020 thing. They do it with franchising, and this whole idea that like myself and team owners and Riot all work together, other personalities who are on board with this, to conspire to create a terrible system or something. I think a lot of people will look at this and say, Riot mishandled all of this. But I think it is no one at the time. Look, when Overwatch League hit, everyone was like, this is a fucking bad idea. But I don't think anybody really at the time, especially back in 2013, was looking at what Riot was doing and saying this was terrible. Like, the esports was growing and popping off, and everyone was really excited about it. I think if anything, the frustration was more around the idea that they were taking it out of the third-party ecosystem, which is, I believe, a separate discussion. And totally reasonable to have a conversation about that. But I don't think people were saying, how dare Riot try to support this stuff? How dare they try to invest into these ecosystems around the world? So, yeah, I think obviously we know things different, and they know things different, and that's why they did Valorant so differently. The way they handle stuff there it's completely different. And I got hit pretty hard today on Twitter for suggesting that it was obvious that they would try to do some sort of America's mega region whenever we saw them doing this in Valorant. But I stand by that, because I think if you look at what they did in Valorant, it was all the things that they feel like they should have done in League. And whether or not that's true or not, but like, yeah,
ecosystem.
Right, exactly. So, I don't really fault them for doing this. I think obviously they've led to, like, there were a lot of other jumping points that they could have made some different decisions, and I don't think that they've done everything perfectly along the way. But yeah, I don't think that.
Of course not.
Yeah, I don't think it's this. Ellis, I don't know if you've found any.
Yeah. I searched it. There's actually some Koreans in watching the show right now, because there's a lot of threads quoting what you guys are saying and translating it.
I just want to say I love Faker. He's great, and big fan.
You're buying the skin now that you have the Kia partnership.
Yeah.
I think it's terrible that Gen G did not get the attention that they deserve after they won. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm struggling to understand some of the comments. I'm not totally fluent in Korean. I'm like quite conversational, but yeah. All in all, they're mostly just reporting on it. There are some people saying that like 3 splits is bad. So that sentiment, I did see that comment a couple of times. Some people saying that they think that eventually people will think that it's good. Some people are comparing it to like what happened to, what is it, Southeast Asia or APAT, PCS or whatever.
Yeah.
And then obviously Valorant gets brought up. So yeah.
The PCS comparison is more like accurate than the Valorant one, I think, just given like how that league works. And I can understand, especially like from the Korean perspective, why they aren't as much of a fan of 3 splits, because I think the double round robin best of 3s is like just the right format for that league,
Yeah. I'm trying to think while we have LS here. LS, you also referenced what you'd seen in other esports, because I think many of us have been around since the ancient days. I think all of us except for Kelby, who was probably 3 when StarCraft was.
I was in college coaching with Hatham.
Okay, but that was like 4 years ago. I'm talking about like I'm talking about 15 years ago when StarCraft 2 was a thing.
Oh, okay.
Well, we're gonna go back to StarCraft 1. All right, I'm 2004.
Yes.
Yeah, this guy's.
I'm 2004. That's my year.
But yeah, LS, what has your past experience in esports and all that, how's that led to your perspective on this topic now?
So I was obviously there for what happened to StarCraft 2 or StarCraft 1 in Korea when StarCraft 2 came out. And obviously that was like Kespa, the death of OSL, and some of the stuff like that, and like the fall of the leagues in China, the fall of Pro League, those types of things. Blizzard obviously did region locking in StarCraft 2, and I think that was that was looked at as positive initially, but then it was perceived as bad, because they perceived it as like a death of the game in a way, region locking. Because eventually what would happen is once the region started dying out because of sponsorships and teams just financially didn't have enough money to keep things running and whatnot, and Blizzard stopped giving money and all this other type of stuff, regions just started to go under slowly, right? And then a domino effect happened. And then because the regions were segregated, it caused problems. And so StarCraft 2, it has like these big tournaments that get binked by the same like 16 players over and over and over. I'm actually doing a video with Rainer in this month or something, talking about what happened in StarCraft 2 and like comparing it to LoL and whatnot. But yeah, StarCraft 2's death is well documented over like 14 years it was out. If we saw like what also happened to Dota, and the path that took, obviously Dota is still around, but like it had its opening in Korea and then it had its server shut down. And then you have the different servers, and you see what happens when Riot doesn't care about certain, or not doesn't care, but when Riot has like problematic servers, where they turn off ranked at like certain hours and stuff like that. If you look at Warcraft 3, when Warcraft 3 fell apart inside of South Korea and inside of North America, when the tournament started to shut down and the team started to fall apart, and then the ladders stopped getting updated due to inactivity, and these types of things. Or like Hearthstone was another really good one when the team started to fall apart for Hearthstone, and then Blizzard with the region locking and stuff there. So it's all like it's all frightening when the regions start to like lock up, or when they don't try to do things that keep the communities alive, and they just kind of try to keep everything open, or they try to keep the leagues operational. And I'm not super familiar with like the whole mess that was Overwatch League. I'm sure like Steve would probably know more. I assume. I'm not sure, but
I was out of it. They stayed out of Overwatch League. So.
Oh, you stayed out of Team Liquid. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why they still have a company today.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, we avoided
Very
that bad decision for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, Overwatch also, it looked like that had to be some sort of a disaster. Again, I'm only looking at it with a bird's eye lens, but it looked like it had to be a disaster. Something clearly went wrong there. But obviously, I guess it's the company, right? And I'm segueing this into Riot is the best at what they do on a global scale, with everything that they have set up all across the world. So I think it's like really crazy to claim that they would be doing something harmful in regards to this.
Yeah.
I do have one question, LS, just because like I know the Korean sentiment that I've seen so far is that the three tournament system, like international leading the 3 splits, they're kind of worried about their format. I think it's gone really well for China and Korea, like having the 2-split system, just given the teams and how many games they play.
Yeah.
And like in terms of the third international event, you kind of said you're a fan. Personally, I don't think a 5-team tournament is great, but I know that like it would at least encourage more travel among the teams to hopefully like have a spot where people can kind of center up in boot camp. Is that kind of your theory as to why like you're a fan of it, or is it just like crossing regions more pretty much?
I think more international play is always good. One thing that I did say, and I didn't say this on Twitter, I said it only in the video. I'm not I think Fearless Draft is I think it's fake. I think you guys talked about that at the very beginning of the show.
Yeah, I agree a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Fearless Draft is fake because I think we're already seeing it in LPL. We're also seeing it in LCK Academy Series. I talk to Griffin all the time. Reddy's on T1 Academy. They play that in that league. Teams just exchange patterns in the draft. That's all that happens because the bans don't carry over long enough, or the picks don't carry over long enough because it's just one series. So if you only play 2 games or 3 games, it doesn't matter. It's too easy to clone pre-pep drafts. So you end up seeing the same thing across series. So I don't know what the solution is. Obviously, if you reach game 5 in a series, yes, you do see the effect of Fearless Draft. Iron Man is a little bit better, where everything goes away completely. So Iron Man's a little bit better, but again, cloning would still exist in up to like game 2, game 3, possibly. I'm pondering if like sealed would be a route that Riot could go, but I don't think they would ever do that. So sealed being like at the start of a week or something, they announced to the teams like, you guys have these 60 champions.
I love when
you know
Alice
what I mean?
comes on
And-
and uses magic terms. It's so nice for me.
yeah, you like that? That's good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
When do I get to play Commander as my way of playing League of Legends competitive esports? Yeah. I think we'll see how the Fearless stuff goes. I mean, I think it's on the long list of conversations about next year. It's maybe on 5th or 6th on the rung that we need to get to at some point in time. But yeah, I don't know. It is good to hear LS because I think you are. Again, it's just so funny because I think a lot of people. I have never found you to be somebody who's afraid of voicing frustrations with Riot Games or decisions they are making, and hearing that you think like overall this is necessary and could lead to good things. I think it's interesting because I'm sure a lot of people feel differently and are maybe surprised to hear you say that. But I don't know at what point in time people start to feel like, okay, maybe there's something here. So
high tide raises all ships.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
Yes. Thank you for the call. We have a little bit less, a little bit more than 30 minutes to get some more calls in, and I know we've only had a couple. So, but is there anything you want to shout out here at the end?
No. Sub to Traffic Alfred with Twitch Prime. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm sad we didn't get to play
I'll see
Magic
you later.
at Worlds. We need to do it soon. Hopefully we're in the same country.
Yeah. Whenever I'm
Yeah.
in LA or
All right,
something.
we'll catch you soon.
Okay.
Thanks,
See
LS.
you later. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
CD.
See you.
Bye, LS.
Bye, guys. See you. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, LS, for coming on the show. All right.
Yeah.
I know we've had a couple more positive takes, but I think, Cubby, do we have anybody in the pipeline who's feeling not so great about it?
We'll see how positive or negative it is, because this is definitely like I'm here to explain their perspective.
Okay.
But we'll see what their perspective actually is. So
Sure.
we'll see.
All right. Off goes Cubby. Let's see where we got Evil Trenton. Thank you for the sub. A2 YOLO. Thank you for the prime. Shammy KC. Daddy Please Spank Me. Big Angry Hobo with the 500 bits. Eternal Cow. Thank you everybody for the subs and support. I do see some people in chat saying just bring this on, like bring this coach on, or bring on this person. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to just like snap my fingers and have personalities from certain regions suddenly appear on the show. But if people do want to come on from, if there's like a coach or somebody from the Brazil side who wants to talk about this stuff, I'm super down for it. We got Darklight here. Darklight, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from São Paulo, Brazil.
Sao Paulo, Brazil. Okay. Fantastic. Are you going to is there a digital way for you to send me a picture of, is it Vampata? Is that how you say their name?
Yeah, I'm not very active on Twitter. I'm a big YouTube watcher of the Travis Gafford show, especially because there's a lot of time exchange between LA and São Paulo.
Sure.
But I've been on the show once before on MSI because I was really excited about CBLOL. And then I was dragged to the show, so it's my second time here.
Great. Well,
so
I'm glad.
It's interesting. Second time trying, second time here.
Glad to have you on. What is your take, or what do you want to talk about on the show tonight?
So yeah, I just wanted to explain a little bit of the Brazilian view of things. So I believe I watch LCS. I watched CBLOL for 10 years. I watched the LCS, especially when Double Lift was on, and I dropped the LCS. I continue watching the CBLOL regardless of international success, basically. Each year it passes, I think the CBLOL community always, and Brazilian fans are very, very, very passionate. They always think next year is going to be the year that we're going to succeed. They even, and different than LCS, for example, because I watched a lot of the videos of LCS is dying and everything. When the LCS fan says, and the US does not succeed or NA does not succeed on international stage, they did stop watching. In Brazil, they say they're going to stop watching, but they continue watching because the numbers only grow. And they continue to watch the CBLOL, they see the finals, and they say, wow, this is going to be the year. And they go into internet, and they say all the shit that they say, and they say they're never going to watch again, and we're right there at the beginning of the split again. So the feeling here is that the LCS was a failed product, and was a product that was dying slowly. And Brazil felt that the CBLOL, I don't want to speak for the whole community, but my opinion, watching a lot of podcasts and personalities here, that we have a lot of personalities, was that Brazil was a successful product and would become, even though we did not have a good showing internationally, we would become a major region basically because the other regions would stop to exist. So we will be able to develop and be able to develop more and more those teams because we would deserve a second spot eventually because of the product that the CBLOL was and what it could produce for Riot. The feeling was also like that the LCS was saved many times before. Like how many times Riot moved things around to make sure that, and I understand North America is an important market to be, much more important to Brazil, to be honest, financially speaking, obviously. But how many times do we see things that happen to LCS that they did not do for Turkey? They did not do it for Japan. They did not do it for Oceanic. They even gave out the like they didn't like they became NA residents basically, so they gained more players to bring to the LCS. So the feeling was always that the LCS had more opportunity because they were an important market and because Riot is based in North America. And in the end, like Brazilians, if you see a final, if you see a game on the CBLOL, they see that they do not care about like the other markets. They do not care about the LCS. They do not care about about like LEC. They watch it. They watch the international play, but they do their own party. Even when we go to international, there's like 6 people from Brazil there, but they're going crazy. They're doing their stuff because they are fine doing their stuff. And the feeling in the end is that Brazil did not need this. Basically, it was a possibility to be able to and we are very open as well. I think if the LCS wanted to merge as well, they wanted to come here, they wanted to be able to build something together. We had philanthropic like tournaments here that Palafox was here basically, and he got it. Like people said a lot of stuff, and then they were like joking. They like the rivalry was there, but by the end of the game, they like Brazil. They understood that it was all like basically Mimi, so it was fine. I feel like what we're doing right now is creating a rivalry that is not gonna be healthy. I think the VCT is a bad example. Valorant was a very new game in which the LoL is not. There's a big gap between the regions, and there's a difference of like. And Brazil was very lucky to have a team like Loud performing to cheer. The other 2 Brazilian teams are not performing in VCT Americas, and the tier 2 was not successful here. So if that wasn't successful in a new game, what will happen on basically on a game that we know that NA is much better? You guys have more infrastructure, you guys have a much more stronger currency than Brazilian teams. So if eventually like those teams cannot operate in North America, and the Loud CFO CEO, he had mentioned before that like his fans, he sells shirts in BRL, but his operational costs are in USD. So it's very hard to maintain that environment. Imagine for LoL. So again, I think this is a big, big swing. And if this is like if CBLOL, like the teams cannot operate in North America in the end of the day, and the player base just becomes like 1 or 2 players, and we lose a lot of viewership, what was this for in the first place then? Like I think they could have done more of like adding international. I like the more international play between the regions. I don't think we needed to merge them. I think we'll be able to have 3 splits, have more of like LLA, have more LCS and CBLOL games within them, give more spots for worlds. But I do not understand the whole merging, and I think the 10 team. And Travis, just last point, imagine not have, and then you would say like Well, you just lost to a league that had 32 players banned. That is right. But I think, imagine you not having to explain on a video for 15 minutes of why academy and investing in academy is important. CBLOL Academy has all the 10 teams from CBLOL in academy, plus I think we have 14 teams already. We have an open academy system. So we're very invested on academy. We're trying to build and we're trying to get better by improving young talent, which we understand that is important, especially because bringing Korean players is extremely expensive, and they really that well, in the past they did not pan out. Like Malrank is 1-3 on CBLOL, and he's a LEC legend. The two teams right now on CBLOL leading have young people, like really young players who had opportunity right now. The players who just joined and are on those 14 academy teams, they are basically like looking right now at those news, and they do not know what is going to happen. So I think the uncertainty of like everything about the scenario is what is triggering a lot of people to go into Twitter and say everything that they're saying. So I think it's very, very complex. Yeah, that is my take.
So
Sorry.
No, it's great. There was we always get the normal thing where if a caller has like a very long monologue, I think people are frustrated. They want them to wrap up. But I think what you just did was very helpful for me. Somebody who look, when I go on Twitter and I see people all spamming me with a naked picture of a man with a fuck LCS sign over his crotch, it doesn't help me understand the perspective of a CBLOL fan. I don't understand why there's so much frustration. But you giving me that explanation, I think, is really helpful, especially knowing that I was unaware that there's a sentiment within Brazil that LCS has received all this special treatment. I think because for a lot of LCS fans, we feel like we've gotten shifted to shitty time schedules. We've had to share with Valorant. We feel like we've had a lot of things against us. But I can also understand how if you're in Brazil, you look at things like, they get Oceanic players, quote unquote, for free, through this merger, or, they get a lot of attention, they're right next to Riot. I can understand why there's a sense of favoritism. And so hearing this idea, the sentiment, Brazil's on the rise, we're going to surpass, North America, and maybe we could surpass Europe at some point in time in terms of popularity and a status as a region. And then you're a CBLOL fan, you wake up one day and, oh no, we're anchoring you to LCS and dragging you back down. I can understand how, people would feel so passionate and so frustrated in that moment. So
yeah, that is basically it. I think I've seen there's a lot of podcasts and everything. I think you spoke with Eric from Ice Esports before. There were discussions about mergings in the past, but they Brazilians, they thought we have the successful league, and regardless if they do not see the financials in Riot, so they do not know what a successful league in the end is. But the feeling was that we will be able to make that on our own, operating in Brazil, having players from here, our costs being here, and then be able to surpass and basically not surpass, but be able to compete internationally, investing inside the regions. And this is what the teams did, and the community, and I think the league itself understood that very clearly from the beginning, especially because North America had a big culture of importing very expensive players that we do not have the luxury of doing. The teams here could bring Koreans from tier 4, 3, not the tier 1s and 2 after they're being world champions. So they could not follow those risks, basically bring a Korean here that maybe would not adapt to the culture, that maybe did not want to be in Brazil, that maybe wanted to leave in the next day to throw a split and throw around money like crazy. So I think that the league and CBLOL is a very successful product in a way that they build very slowly, and they build a lot of legends here. I think Double Lift is the big one from the LCS, but the whole broadcast focus a lot of creating narratives of even the teams that are on the bottom, this team is brand new, they're just new players, they're against the world, and then they cheer, and the people cheer for them because they want them to win a game, and they are so happy to win a game. So you have people who are more traditional, like Pain, which is always in the final. You had teams that were very successful in the franchising when CBLOL became a franchise, like Loud, who was not on CBLOL from the beginning. So we are looking as well as on a scenario in which a lot of like players, a lot of teams were able to build fandom in different levels. Some of them more traditional, some of them bringing new narratives, and some of them being basically new. So I think the CBLOL is very successful because of that. So think about the big narrative right now is like BRTT just came back to play, and he's 0-4. Well, that narrative just died with this news. Like nobody, like did it die? Like we don't know. It's he would not have the same time to develop or to try to get there now that he had before, knowing that there's only one split. So again, it's a very big risk and it's very uncertain. And I think the Brazilian fans understand that, like, and they feel like it was not needed. And if in the end CBLOL just disappears, it's gonna feel like well, why didn't we just keep it separated? Because after it is done, I think, and if it doesn't work, the people who will have to rebuild this again, I don't think it's gonna be that easy to be able to, okay, we can just not merge again, bring back CBLOL, and just bring back those teams who actually invested on the who franchised this league, who were there from the first place, who were there when it became a franchise. Would they want to come back? Would they don't? Would there still be fans? We don't know. So yeah.
The only thing that
I have
confused
I
me
have a
there. Go
question
ahead,
for you.
Steve.
Yeah, I have a quick question for you. So, within the league, how many teams are going to be reduced in the new structure? It's going from how many teams to how many teams?
It's going. 4 teams are gonna. If the invited team is not a Brazilian team, it's gonna be 4 teams.
Okay, so
who are gonna go up.
they'll remove 4 teams, and
Yeah.
those 4 teams, what percentage do they make up of like the viewership and fandom? You know, for example, like in the LCS, you could say, how big was the Golden Guardians like fan base? It's like they sold a jersey. You know, it's like not that big. You know, it's like it really doesn't mean much. But is that the same case in CBLOL? Like what percentage
I'm
of the
gonna give
fan
I'm
base is
gonna
going to
give
be
you an
affected by
example,
4
Steve.
teams?
Like there's a team called Liberty, who is a team who doesn't invest a lot on CBLOL. They have a very small budget, but they made a run on the last split, winning 6 to 7 games in a row, almost making it to playoffs. Did they sell a lot of jerseys? I don't know, but I know people were watching, and that story was being highlighted on the broadcast, and it was interesting to see because you had teams who had they spend a lot on their rosters, and they did not know if they're gonna lose to just a brand new team of like 18-year-olds. So again, it is more about the story and be able to move it around. It is a lot of who are they playing, what is the status of like the board right now. So I feel like they are not a big team, but they did have that story on the last split, and the stories, they become very successful here. I think because of the big stream audience that we have, because of the influencers that co-stream, so they are able to create and highlight those stories a lot. So I think it is not that black and white in a sense that you can just say, oh, this team is meaningless in to the league.
It's not like an LCS Darklight where like because a lot of people were greeted with this news and they're like, oh, maybe Immortals will leave or maybe Dignitas will leave, and like they actually consider that to be maybe a good thing, especially because there's a hope that like the guest slot becomes like the disguised host slot or something. And it sounds like that's not how Brazilian fans are reacting.
Yeah, it's because, like, for example, Liberty, they went and they posted on their social medias and everything. They said, look, guys, we do not have the money to compete with Pain or with Loud. We're going to focus on developing talent, and we're going to give opportunities to new talents. So what they did was basically bring new rosters and try to implement new things to be able to be that team, basically, to do that function. So I think there are teams in CBLOL that they do a function to that they are obviously they're going to say they're trying to win, but they're also trying to develop the league, and they understand the position that they are. So I think it varies a lot. So I don't think we have that feeling of like, oh, they should live like there was this feeling about INTZ in the last split, and then now they're like leasing players from because nobody wanted to play on INTZ. INTZ is the biggest winner in Brazil, but they since the franchise they've been in last almost every single time, and people were like saying, well, they're broke, they need to leave. Well, yeah, I was one of them. They are in first place because they brought two huge talents from academy, not because they bought it, because they lease it from Pain Gaming, and they're using them to give them main stage exposure and on the first year. So Pain is gonna Pain also wins because they'll be able to take those players again in the future and be able to implement them into their lineup if they won. So this is developing talent as well. So how would you do that with a tier two? Because if they win the tier two, they cannot have like Pain Gaming and Pain Academy on the Southern Conference. So it is very like again the stories change a lot, and each split is a story, and I think this is why CBLOL is successful, to be honest.
One of the things. Oh, go ahead, Kelby.
I was just gonna say I appreciate this, and I'm listening to all the stories that you're telling, and they're enlightening. You mentioned earlier, and I think it was very valid concern, like the Loud CEO for VCT saying, like I now have operational costs that are based in the US, but a lot of my monetization direct from my audience comes from a currency that is less, has less weight in the global market. CBLOL though, or sorry, the Southern Americas region, they're still operating in Brazil, correct?
Yes, but well, yeah, by my understanding, yes, but I don't know.
Is
Yes.
there
It should be like one. The rumor right now is North Conference / LCS and LCS Studio and CBLOL / South Conference in Sao Paulo.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Okay. So understanding that, like all of the stories that you've just given us, I'm wondering what about the changes prevents those from still existing within the current ecosystem. Like
Yeah.
I haven't heard a change. Like I guess you could say, well, there's less opportunities for narrative because there's fewer teams, but like you're talking about a team that's in last and is developmental and then has a run deep in the season, that can still exist with fewer teams that exist in the league. Otherwise, you're like, really, we want to just add as many teams as possible for as many opportunities of different narrative, but we know that obviously it doesn't work that way, and at a certain point it just becomes confusing and inundated with like way too many things going on, right? So I'm curious about like what about the changes do we think actually from your perspective threaten what you currently enjoy about being a fan of your teams and region?
I think this is a very exciting news for players in Brazil because I think having more the possibility to be able to move and be able to be in the North America Conference, I think, and being all the players being residents to the Americas, I think there will be a shift in not in player base, but from the professional players that are here. And I think the personalities, if they shift and they are not representing a Brazilian team, it's not going to bring the same audience and it's not going to bring the same feeling as the CBLOL once had. I think we have examples on that on VCT. Like, I know, like, if you see the chat or everything on VCT, you'll be able to see that there's like Sassy and there's like Aspas on like a Latin team, and they are on Sentinels as well. There are fans who only cheer for Loud because Loud is a full Brazilian team. Sadak is not even Brazilian, but we consider him a Brazilian because he's been with us so long. So again, it is not like a big threat in that sense, but I think like it will lose a lot of the personality that the CBLOL has now. I think we were able to create an identity in a system that in a way that was very unique and very weird in comparison to other leagues. Like a lot of the league fandom follows international performance. LCK, LPL. Well, LCK is very successful because everybody plays LoL, but like LEC, I think like a lot of the feeling is that they all always want international success, and I think the LEC took a page from the CBLOL when they brought Carmine Corp, when they brought all those teams regionally, because they're trying to create more interactions between each team in the league to depend less of international performances throughout. So I think what you're saying makes sense. I think they could still operate here. I also feel like the main feeling was still that the LCS was struggling, and that Brazil will be able to get a more spots on their own. I'm not saying that this is a correct feeling to have or not. I'm just saying that this is the feeling that I've seen the most, and I feel
What-
like looking
what
at
would-
the LC. Yeah, you sorry.
Sorry, what would lead Brazil to get more slots on the international stage?
Well, people thought that because of the viewership, because of the league was successful, and because the leagues were basically reducing themselves, they would bring more teams, and Riot would understand the value of like, wow, Brazil's a successful market of its own. It will be interesting for LoL in general to have them perform better international. So let's give them 2 spots so they'll be able to develop more, because it's very frustrating, I guess, to go to international stage and play 3 games
Sure.
for a Brazilian
Yeah,
team. So
especially when you're
regardless of if it's fair or not, because I agree that it is fair to have 4 LPL teams because they are better, but that is
Right.
the feeling.
They changed VCS in the past. Could happen to CBLOL too in the future. You know.
Right, but wouldn't
Yeah.
you then look at this change and be like, this is a positive change in that direction because now we have a path for 2 teams competing.
Yeah.
We have to beat the weakest international major region in North America, and we get a second slot. And not only that, but our seeding may not be into a play-in spot. It may be directly into groups, which we haven't seen CBLOL competing in. I don't know. I looked at Liquipedia today. Like I couldn't find a time. Not saying it hasn't existed. But if that is important, I would look at this and say this is a greater path forward for international representation and success.
No, yeah, I think there is the possibility of like Brazil being more representative internationally, but there's also now the chance of Brazil not sending anybody to Worlds, and
No,
that
they have
is
one spot guaranteed.
I don't think they have one slide guarantee for Worlds. They do?
It's one
I
north,
think
one
it
south,
is.
and one
Yeah.
that is determined by a match
Yeah, that's
between
correct. Yeah.
north and south.
And then whoever wins MSI, that region will get an extra spot, correct?
Yeah, that's true, Steve. I don't think that
Well,
that's
that's
probably
not coming
relevant
here.
to our conversation, but yes,
Yeah.
that is true. If America's what MSI, we could even get an extra spot in. So I love the optimism. It's the most Steve thing in the world to bring that up.
Yeah, I think in a lot of conversations that I've had internally with NAGMs, they're like, oh man, NA's losing a slot and we're giving it to a region that hasn't performed at all international. I'm like, well, we haven't performed internationally either. So I think, at least from my perspective, to the extent that that matters, I get the narrative of like, hey, if we are really, really domestic focused and we just want the most storylines possible for our region, then cutting the number of teams obviously is not going to feel good, right? As we've discussed, there's probably Riot. It doesn't behoove Riot to see a region increasing in viewership and have all the data that's happening with like how that's impacting player base and investment and monetization and stuff. They're not going to be like, you know what? Fuck this. We, for some reason, just don't want to have our game continue to grow in Brazil. We're gonna cut 4 teams out of the ecosystem and hamper it. I can't see any reason why they would make that decision.
Darklight, the last question I had for you here is like, I think I would love to understand a little bit on the sentiment of why Brazil fans are so angry at the LCS. Because like the way I look at it is Brazil fans and North Americans just woke up and found out that Riot Games had shoved both of us into like a prison cell and said, okay, you guys now are cellmates. And I
It's-
feel like
it's
what has
almost like
happened is that the CBLOL fandom has turned on the LCS in the prison and been like, I fucking hate you, you're terrible. When in reality, we did, it's not as though I have been coming on this show for the last year being like, you know what I really want us to do? I want us to merge with Brazil. And that like the casters and the fans and everybody have been like, you know what we need? We need Brazil to save us. Like we are as well, maybe I wouldn't say we're as unhappy, because I think Brazil fans are very unhappy, but we are not happy with this either. And so I think I've been confused as to why, like, the whole Twitter feed is just fuck LCS, and then when I talk about it, people say and fuck you too to me, quite literally. That's what they're saying, and I'm confused because I'm not I didn't ask for this. The LCS fans didn't ask for this. Why are people not angry at the Riot Global team for making this decision? Why are they angry at the LCS? I don't know if you can answer that, Darklight, because I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give a little bit of context. So what my work is on life is basically I report to North America, so I explain a lot of the things that are happening here, and not all things translate. So Brazil is a very memey country in general, and again, we are very very passionate and a lot of feelings. So when you translate, when you literally translate that, it sounds very offensive in a way. When I speak English is not the same way that when I speak Portuguese. And I feel like what I've seen in the past, discussed in podcasts, because it was discussed in many medias here, could the CBLOL be in danger of being tied to the LCS or to LLA? And they always said, no, the LCS needs us. A lot of the influencers says the LCS needs us. We are the successful league now. We are growing. And I'm not saying this feeling is correct. I'm not saying that makes financially sense when you look at a company like Riot and what the North America market means. I'm saying that this was the feeling. So again, it was seen in the past that before LCS performed fairly much better actually recently than in the past, but there were some international showings of LCS that people, especially influencers and streamers, they would say, well, why do they still have 3 seats? Why don't we have 2? They are not that much better than us. They are not that much better. And I feel
I get that sentiment.
they're you guys are. I think it is obvious that you guys are, but again, it's sentiment. They feel like we have a product that would be able to grow more if we had more exposure internationally, and if we had a chance to be more successful internationally. So I think that is the reason, and I think they see a lot of discussions of how lifting the importing rule, giving oceanic spots on the LCS, that things that were not done to other leagues. Look at Japan. Japan performed incredibly well in the PCS. They went to the final without having a league, and they did not have an international one representative at MSI after dissolving their league. So it is very complex in a way to see the amount of shifts and changes and tries to make the LCS a appealing product again, and not seeing it for other leagues that maybe deserved a little bit of attention too. I think that is the sentiment.
Thank you for explaining that. I know we've talked to you for a very long time, and you've been, I think, very helpful for explaining this stuff, and so we do have to make sure that we move on, because Steve is probably going to have to leave in a second. We've got another caller, so but I do really appreciate it. Look, as I said before, I don't want CBLOL fans to feel like this is something that North American fans or personalities were in favor of or pushed for. I think it is really unfortunate what is happening to that region. And I kind of just wish instead of fuck LCS, it was fuck Riot. If it had to be one of the two. And I'm not saying it needs to, but if you're going to say fuck and then some, a proper noun, maybe we direct it to the folks who, it's we didn't do this. I didn't ask for this. Darklight, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
No, thank you. Thank you so much for bringing me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really do appreciate you calling in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, thank you.
Steve, I know
Okay.
you have a hard out in 5 minutes, and we have another caller, so we're going to go a little bit over time, but I can let you run off now if you want to say some final words or share some thoughts here at the end of the show.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thank you so much. Really appreciated the last caller too. So I'll just say, I know Travis, you mentioned this, but I have to say it too, which is, and it was really apparent to me from the way that the caller was describing it. Like, we're talking about organizations, founders that probably bootstrapped, have built from the ground up, like these organizations to pull together a team that is competing in CBLOL and maybe have been doing that for like a decade, and to rip the rug from underneath them and say, you are not going to exist next year. And everything that you've built over the last 10 years has ceased to exist. Your fan base, your structure, your gaming house, your staff, you got to fire everybody by the end of the year. And we just told you online. You found out this morning. Like, that's fucked up. Okay. Maybe they knew in advance. I'm not insinuating they found out this morning. I shouldn't have said that. But like, it all fucking sucks. And nothing about the future and it's going to be better and the pruning concept and it's business sustainable. Yes, this is all rationalization, but it doesn't take away from the fact that that sucks. And so I just want to recognize that. I want to have like a moment for that. I think it's important. Sorry to all the staff and, you know, the people that will be affected by that. You know, and yeah, so I just want to say that. And then, you know, this has been a great conversation. I wish I could stay. Travis, thank you so much for having me on. Congratulations on the new partner. And yeah, it's good to chat. So,
yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys play this weekend. You guys play Saturday. You're the opening match, right, against FlyQuest?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a dub. I think we might have a perfect season this season.
Oh, okay. That's. I wish we'd had more time to talk about that because that's fun. Perfect season.
Want to
Okay.
take a bet on it?
Yeah.
I think we're going to do really well.
Yes.
I'm excited about it. So.
Okay. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to retweet this after you either stomp FlyQuest or get stomped by them, because I think it'll make for a great engagement either way.
We won't get stomped, I promise you.
Awesome. Thanks.
It's not going to happen.
All right.
Thanks,
Have a good
Steve.
one, Steve.
Yeah.
See you, Steve.
Thanks.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. So thanks again to Steve. I do appreciate he made it clear that he had to run at that time, and I know it's getting really late for Kelby. So I know we have another caller in the tank. Cubby, if you want to go grab him.
Yep, last one.
Shout out to the Eternal Cow, Showtime, Ventus official, Steve Wisey. Hey, Steve. Basket O' Knives, and Rhett CS. Oh, wow. Ventus is at 73 months. Holy moly. Over on YouTube, thank you to Brandon Myers for becoming a member. Folks, I'm going to be honest. I know a lot of people were like, oh, get him to wrap it up, or like, we can't get that many calls, and this person. I, like, all day long, I spent looking at a bunch of tweets that were at me from fans in Brazil who were very unhappy, and I was really happy that on the show we were able to show a Brazilian fan perspective. So I think
it was a
time
long call, but a reasonable one.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate the sentiment of like they see all the accommodations made for LCS, but like they built that shit on their own. I actually I didn't realize it was like to that extreme, you know? I respect that. So yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Red is here. Red, where are you calling from?
From Raleigh, North Carolina.
Raleigh, North Carolina. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Well, I had the extensive Doom take, which was that I'm worried that the changes might kill the LCS entirely. Because with the recent changes that have been going on, it feels like our traditionalist fans have been feeling like they're on a knife's edge between the TSM and CLG leaving, and more teams leaving, and this is going to kick 2 more out. So your old school fans are going to leave, and then your new school fans, which I'd assume would hopefully be the ones from the CBLOL LLA regions. I'm worried that changing their environment too drastically would also chase them away. So any viewership influx we could have gotten from then wouldn't be as significant as we'd hope. And with the direction that things have gone, I've loved the broadcast recently, but what I like doesn't really matter if there aren't enough viewers to make the money.
So the premise is basically like, hey, we're going to lose teams, which will lose viewers for the LCS, and we're not going to gain any viewers from this, and so we're going to be in an even worse place than we were before.
I mean,
Yep, essentially.
the nice part about these changes is, with having the guest partner team, they actually just gave Mark C a rose, and this offseason gets to be an episode of The Bachelor for LCS, and Mark gets to pick the new partner for the LCS that comes in.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the two partner. Don't they give the rose to somebody who has to leave? Oh no, they give the rose to who stays.
You get the rose if you stay.
Okay,
yeah.
isn't there?
So Mark
what's
has
the reality
rose.
show where you give something to somebody who's leaving?
I don't know. I'm too old for that.
Oh, I thought there was a show where you do that. Okay, so but I think it's more that it's not that he gets to give a rose to somebody to stay. I think they'll do some sort of qualifier tournament, right, Cubby?
Someone to join. So that's up in the air. If they did a qualifier tournament, I'd be very curious who does end up getting to join out of those teams. I have a feeling, though, that, I think for the first one, given that you're just straight up joining, I'm pretty sure that Mark would rather, rose it. I really think that the LCS, straight up, I think they benefit a lot.
I just think that super undermines
from getting disguised.
Yeah, I get the idea that viewership could be up if Toast just gets the spot, but it so undermines the whole point of the guest slot, which is there's now a path in. If the very first team that comes in is just, hey, we like you, you could increase viewership,
Well, what I will say is that when all the changes were made to NACL last year, there was, in that announcement, a rumored tournament that they were going to have between the Americas Tier 2 system. And if they had that tournament, actually introduced it this split and then had it play for spots in the new conferences, that would be incredibly hype. But I think it does undermine it for split 1, but I could also see them wanting to pick the partners that they started with, just like they did in Valorant, pretty much. So there's that too.
All right. Well, I just would be very surprised if that's what ends up happening. I mean, I guess it could end up happening, but the bigger question is who leaves. Go back to the caller's point, though, caller.
Yeah.
Do you really worry that viewership will suffer if Dignitas and Immortals or Shopify leave?
It's less about the teams that leave and more of the feeling of what we lose for our other sport comparison. There have been a lot of complaints about the influence of money in college athletics at the moment, and there are a lot of worries that if it reaches a certain threshold, then viewership will collapse entirely. It just depends on where that threshold is.
Okay.
So it's less of who leaves and more of a feeling.
So what about these changes increase that feeling for you? Is it just the straying from the norm, or are you what are you doomsday about with these changes coming in?
Well, there would be the half of the two teams leaving on top of the two that have already left. The promotion relegation sounds great, but the addition of the LLA team, I'm worried for them and their health, because from their perspective, all of the interconnections they had between their own teams are suddenly gone. They're on their own. So it's hard for them to keep up their tradition as a team. And if they don't perform well and they get relegated, they're entirely gone.
Yeah. You know what? I actually want to run off that and just say that, if we're going to go back to the inception of franchising in the first place, I actually think it was a huge mistake for Riot when they were building out all these regions to not just include LOA in the NA ecosystem. these teams actually needed way more of a backbone, and like having those two leagues go from like what they were to down to one, and then now to this. I feel like when this was incepted, those teams needed more support. And to be fair, I would have much rather had Movie Star R7 in the league than some of the partners that we've had throughout time as well. Like I feel like that's a legit brand. They brought their own fandom, and also, I mean, I know that those players, like, I kind of know where they fall in the talent pipeline. It's kind of similar to like the top of NACL. Because if you ask most challengers teams about their scrim record against LA teams, it's positive. So I feel like if they were actually incorporated in the ecosystem for the first place, then they would have had stronger teams anyway, just participating in our leagues. So I actually, like, I agree with you that it really, like, we haven't really covered those regions and the loss of jobs, because this affects them more so than it does LCS and CBLOL, with those regions going away. Now the tier 2 space will, in theory, be bigger. Hopefully it benefits from some of the popularity of these teams in the first place, and also the fact they can play for promotion into the league would be good as well. But it is an extreme net negative for these teams. And I think that, like, again, if we're going to hindsight this 2020, them not being included in the LCS ecosystem really hurt these teams in the long run.
Kelby, you have any thoughts? You were nodding your head whenever Cubby was saying franchising was a mistake, and then you didn't realize he was going that they should have brought LATAM teams in, I think is what happened. You're like, yes. And then Cubby was like, they should have brought the LATAM team in, and you're like, oh, that's not where I thought you were going.
Yeah, no, not at all. You knew me perfectly, Travis. I think with any major changes that you make to a region, obviously it not being received well is a valid concern. I think that these changes are happening because what we were doing didn't work for Riot and needed to change. I personally like the changes considering the conditions that needed to be met on their end. And I am, I won't speak for you, Travis, but on the inference of your question, I am also not as concerned about. I share Steve's sentiment that there have been grifters in the franchise ecosystem for a significant period of time, and I am not worried about their departure from the ecosystem. And I think if we lose valuable tier 1 teams because they elect to take the offer that Riot has for essentially severance and getting out, we shouldn't force them with handcuffs to stay in. You know what I mean? Like, it's their right to operate their businesses as they see fit. And it, again, speaks to how the ecosystem wasn't working to date. Now, why they're in that position, I think, is largely their fault, and they have to look in the mirror for that. But still, I just don't. I don't share the same concerns that I think that this is a interesting and, for me personally, more engaging take on the product, and I am more likely to be engaged and want to see what is happening moving forward than I have been in the past several years.
So here's a concern, or here's a thought. Kelby, do you think there's a world where there are LCS fans who, because we actually don't know if this is even called the LCS next year.
Sure.
So what if they just hear, because I think there's a lot of casual fans that they don't.
Imagine we lose that awesome branding.
I mean, dude, people have been watching LCS for 12 years. I know you're memeing about, like, I guess the logo and all that stuff, but like,
yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people who are like, I grew up watching the LCS, and if they don't have,
I was one of them.
Yeah. Well, you were an adult. You're a boomer, but
sorry. Yeah.
You, I don't know, lived your life as an adult watching the LCS. And if you can't do that anymore, if you can't say, oh, I'm going to watch this split of the LCS, and instead, because the other thing I think about this is that, like, it was funny to me that they did not explain what conferences are, from what I can tell. They're like, and there's a North and South conference. We all know exactly what conferences are because we all watch traditional American sports, right? And I think there's a lot of people who, unlike you don't. I guess you've been talking a lot about NBA stuff recently. I don't know who Luca is, but you're always talking about
LCS is the Western Conference.
Yeah. I don't know what this reference is. Anyway, So the
Way better.
CBLOL is the Eastern
Wait,
Conference. Is
wait,
that what
yeah,
you're saying?
Yeah, one team conference versus way better conference. All right, come on.
so
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
So
So
anyway,
CBLOL is going to win the 3rd slot for Worlds, then, is what you're saying.
yeah.
so my
No,
point
no, no,
is
no, no, no.
that I think there's a lot of people who might just be like, I don't know what's happening. There's no more LCS. Now we're merged with Brazil. I don't know what a conference is. Who are these? There's new teams in. I don't understand what's happening. And I feel like there's a chance that they're just like, fuck it. I've been on the edge for a while. This has finally pushed me over the side, And I think that I think, Red is worried about losing viewership from teams that leave. I'm not, unless, I think there's a lot of rumors that, like, a lot of people are worried 100T might be one of the ones that are on the fence. I think that could be damaging. But if we lose, like, a Dig or an Immortals or a Shopify, I don't think that we probably lose viewership, and especially if we're replacing them with, like, a Disguised Toast or something.
I think that
yeah.
fandom is built through the top, not the bottom, right? The double lifts and the C9s contribute more to fandom in the league than the Immortals, and I don't know how many players from their roster I can name, but those guys. I don't think that with these changes we lose the double lifts or the C9s. I think that we need more of that, and the problem that League has talked about this a bunch. Problem League has been facing is that, like, we lost a lot of really engaging personalities and a lot of really engaging content over time. And I think that will have a much greater impact on the success of the... That's why I look at APA last split and I'm like, ooh, I like this. This guy's got a lot of personality. He creates a lot of narrative. You know what I mean? I would like to see more of that in the league, and I think that that will help impact success and engagement, as opposed to the people who aren't really doing anything for my...
I'm not worried about those teams. I'm worried about if you can't watch LCS anymore.
Look, if Riot rebrands again, I'm gonna throw a hissy fit.
Do you understand my question? Do you know what I'm talking about,
No,
Kelby?
I don't. Sorry.
They have not committed to the idea that the LCS will exist. Like, there's a very good chance that we just
Could be a new
have
brand.
ACS South and ACS North or something.
LCS conference, CBLOL conference, do not rebrand. They do it way too much. It always is dumb. Just please do not rebrand.
And we think that we will lose fans because they will not like rebranding LCS.
Well, like, I think we'll lose fans because there's a lot of casual fans that are just like, I can't even watch LCS anymore. I guess there's no more LCS. Or like, oh, this is the last split of the LCS? Okay, I guess I'm not watching it next year, or whatever this is going to be. I look, brands have...
hard time getting there.
I don't know if you know this as a person who sells brands, but branding has value. There's something called brand equity, and the LCS has brand equity. Now, a lot of people meme on the LCS. It has memeable brand equity, but like, people are, as we were just talking about this, people grew up watching the LCS. I think they're literally just by not just by changing the name, but if you change the name, you change the teams, you change the structure of this thing, you tell people now it's a merger with Brazil. You have a bunch of hostile Brazilian fans that are all spamming fuck LCS all the time on everything.
Yeah.
Like, I worry that you do see attrition that way that does not get replaced. And that is where I think Red might be wrong, or might be right for the wrong reasons.
It is a gamble. Sometimes they go well, sometimes they go poorly. But ultimately, I think in the long run, the product is what will determine the success of it.
I agree, but when you rebrand, you just like lose momentum. And I think that given where the studios are going to be and the teams participating, maintaining the brands and having all that like socials SEO cooked in is not worth the rebrand at this point.
Kelby thinks
I don't see it.
Kelby thinks we're Kevin Costner in Field of Dreams. He's just
actually
on that. If you build it, they'll
Travis.
come. The ghosts of Double Lift and Bjergsen are going to show out of the corn stalks. What's up,
Let's
Kelby?
name the two conferences, TSM and CLG, and really reignite why we're here in the first place.
Yes.
They're both out of the league. We'll just buy the brand, use it for the conference, and we're back.
You don't need to buy the brand. It's just an abbreviation.
They already hate each other. It's fine.
How do we get because people love chanting TSM, so if we can just rebrand the North Conference into TSM, it'll be great.
Can we just buy the TSM brand? They're announcing they're joining a new Tier 1 region any day, Cubby.
Oh crap! I forgot they were gonna go win worlds through LPL.
Yeah, yeah. Reggie's
God. Oh,
announcement
man.
about the league team is imminent.
Whew. I forgot about that.
I
Either that
know.
or they could partner with Immortals, but you know.
I know we're memeing a ton, but I do think there's value in the caller's concern that like this is a bridge too far for a lot of longtime LCS fans, and that like every year there's some reason. Every year, Riot has done a great job of giving longtime fans a reason not to watch anymore. I think they often do that more than they give people reasons to watch. And I think Mark has done, like, Mark maybe has found, like, a balance this year where he's like, look, we're adding best of threes. A lot of you guys want that. Look, we're doing short times. Meanwhile, the people above him are like, and you have to go in the closet, and we're taking a massive break for a totalitarian dictatorship, and we are doing all these different things. Like they're he's sitting there trying to just plug the holes as much as he can with all the changes
it's a 2
he's
week
making
break, Travis.
to the LCS.
It's a 2 week break.
Yeah, exactly. And and my point is, like, how many holes can we fucking drill into the ship? And I know you're like, yeah, but these holes might be helpful for us long term. But I'm just like, we're taking out a lot of water. And I don't know how long before we capsize. And maybe we don't, but I don't think it is unreasonable that if the color's take, is transformed into this kind of like how many more beatings can this league take? I think it is a fair question.
Yeah. I agree. I just don't. I think that the upside potential is greater than the downside potential.
Yeah.
Okay, question. This is the real question. I fully agree the upside's better. Is it worth losing a slot for MSI and Worlds? Because that's actually a big selling point for teams.
We don't deserve the slots.
Okay, well, it's
Come
still a big
on,
selling point for
dude.
teams. All right. That's the real
Does
question.
Brazil?
Of all this,
That is fair, but I will say the last time we won a match, not a series, a game in group stage at Worlds, Cubby, when was it?
It was this past Worlds when
Group stage.
yeah, they reformatted.
Oh, sorry. Bracket stage.
Oh,
That's what I meant
bracket
to say.
stage?
That's what I meant to say. Sorry.
2018 C9. No?
You know how long ago that was? That's 6 years, dude.
I'm not too good at math, and COVID's like minus a year in there, like almost, in my brain. So
Yeah.
that's a good cope. Yeah.
We're what was I saw a post on Reddit. We're like 2-43 against Korea and LPL in the last 2 years. Like,
yeah, but okay, if that's it, then why are we having an international tournament where we just get to like have one team from every region?
dude,
I hate
our
that.
chances are so much better. It's 1-5, dude. There's less Korean teams and Chinese teams to worry about. You just gotta beat one of them.
They should have done two tournaments.
And you're fearless
separately.
drafting, dude. This is the chance.
It doesn't matter.
Yes, it's just a chance for them to cook in the
Play
kitchen.
some
and be like,
Yorick.
we got some fucking fearless drafts.
Play a Lowy.
Shit they're never gonna see coming.
Shaco.
Can you imagine?
All this bullshit
I'm
busted
feeling
out.
like David right now. I think this is our path.
By the way, Carl Hines in chat says that Travis has never been to Brazil. I fucking love Brazil. I went there in 2017, and I've wanted to go back every year since, and I've waited for them to do an event in Brazil, and so I'm like, that was one of the things I was excited about with the announcement. I was like, I have an excuse to go back.
You know, Cubby, I would be remiss, and I'll shut up about this after, I promise. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Dota.
Okay.
On the show.
What's up?
You know
I love
how
my
many
Dota.
NA teams you know how many NA teams are at the international this year, which is a 16-team tournament, the Dota World Championship? How many slots NA gets?
I don't know, but I know that NA is very good and has done very well in that game.
They get one.
They get one?
South America gets 2.
Hasn't NA teams won Dota?
I have a championship ring from when we won in 2015.
Yeah. That's crazy. What happened?
You know why? Because Valve adjusts the number of slots based on the region's strength and participation over time according to how it evolves. Now, I'm not going to say that Valve is doing a better job running their pro circuit than Riot, for sure. But I'm just, we're fine, okay? We're not underrepresented from a competitive standpoint on the international stage.
I don't know. Anyway,
Caller, Red, do you have anything else to say? Have we covered your take, or do you have any parting words before we give you shout-outs and thank yous?
Well,
Red,
I
did we lose you?
think just in terms of... No, I think I'm still here.
Yeah, go
No,
ahead.
we got you. What's up?
I think we have you. Red, you're still here. We could hear you. Please, anything you want to say here at the end? Oh, we're so close. We're so close.
I'm going to try the drag out and drag back in technique.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Red, hello.
Hello, Red. Are you here? This is so troll.
I don't like this.
He started talking, and then he's like, "Yeah, we're here. I'm
side-
here," and then he stopped talking.
You know,
Side greater than red side.
I'm gonna take the blame. I think I cost us a viewer there.
Yeah, you
That's
brought
on
up
me.
Dota.
That's on me.
He stopped watching the LCS. He was like, "Watch that." You worried about? You think we won't lose viewers? Well, you just lost this one. He disappeared. He just walked away from his computer. Red, one more chance. Do you have a shout out or plug? All right. Well, we're gonna shout out Red, who has what looks like a Kog'Maw, a B Kog'Maw. What's the B Kog'Maw skin?
I think it's just Bima.
Is it Bima? Bima. They like Bima a lot, and they've been in my Discord since May of 2019, which is really. Oh no, they've been a Discord member since May of 2019. I think, but
Damn. They
shout out
haven't
to
been in
Red.
this Discord to see NA win a bracket stage game at Worlds.
We're a big fan of Red, and Red, thanks again for calling. We'll catch you next time. I feel so bad because they were here and then they weren't.
Yeah, that was interesting. I
don't know
dragged
what
them out. They insta left too. Oh wait, no, they went back to pleb calls. Okay.
All right, well, I
maybe
moved
their
them to
mics
pleb
stopped
calls.
working. Okay, that's too bad.
All right. I think that is the show. Any shout outs or plugs? Everyone stick around, please, on stream. I need your help. But any shout outs and plugs? Kelby, what do you got?
Shout out to everyone that tuned in. I know today was a big episode. Also, shout outs to Kia, the new partner. See, I'm doing well there, Travis. And yeah, thanks to everyone that's tuning in. I'm hopefully I'm optimistic. I know we didn't hit on tier 2. I am optimistic for the ecosystem as a whole. I know it's gonna suck to get there, but we kept on talking about a reset, and I feel like this is better than merging Americas as a whole. And knowing, I know that that's promising that as the alternative, but yeah, it was a big day. So thanks for joining us, especially you, Kelby. Yeah.
Kelby, what do you want to shout out?
No shout out. Maybe one parting or final thought that I didn't get to insert with the Brazilian caller, but something that he said did stick true to me. I think the one thing that I hadn't fully considered until he mentioned it is one of the concerns I would have for the new system is the import rule around the Brazilian players, because one of the things that I was concerned with in franchising for the LCS, like we saw with Golden Guardians, is you build a good roster and then the teams that have more resources, like 100 Thieves, just bought that roster from Golden Guardians, right? So if Brazil is like, you know what, we're going to lean in, we're going to get better, we're going to develop, and they make a really good roster, a good set of players, and they win a slot from us at Worlds and stuff, but then our region has more resources and there's no import restrictions because we're in the same conference now. And then we have, NA has no problem importing players. We just take, with our more resources, this roster that Brazil has developed. That's not going to feel super warm and fuzzy for them, probably as a region. That's probably one of my greater concerns long term for that region continuing to feel invested, especially if they do build up a team that is a great rivalry to us and then it just gets poached. So
in chat, Papa Smithy says that you cannot have unlimited Americas players. So I guess my theory about the system and then allowing for inter-conference play in imports is not going to be the case.
That would have been a
Okay.
really cool thing to mention in an interview that they could have done with.
Yeah.
Then I
Okay.
have no concerns. What are you crying about? Just kidding. That's a joke.
I hope
That's not gonna
I
go.
could see pros and cons
Alright.
to each.
Kelby's Twitter handle is located just next
No,
to his head.
don't do it. Don't do it. I am not on Twitter.
Okay.
All right, thanks for having me on, guys.
Shout out to Kia for joining up. I really, really, really appreciate them. I looked at the initial email I sent them, and it was in January. It was the very end of January, and so this has been something we've been working on with them for a long time, and it's been fantastic to have them come on board for Summer Split. I cannot appreciate enough partners who are coming on board, and I will say that they may be not the only partner we're announcing soon. So thank you to Kia again for sponsoring the show and coming on board. You'll be seeing them throughout Summer Split. Thank you to Steve for coming on. And then my final shout out is to the Brazilian fans, because Brazilian fans, I know you were sending me a lot of strong language throughout today on social media, but I understand that this is a shitty situation and you're frustrated, and especially talking to the Brazilian fan, like hearing that, you feel like the league is on the rise, and then, this league that has had special treatment is suddenly bringing it down. Like, I get how that feels super shitty. I am not like, I think a lot of the stuff maybe in, through Google Translator or whatever gets construed, and maybe to you all that I'm like joking about you, or that like I am, trying to screw you over or be mean, but really I'm like very sympathetic to all of you and the situation you're in, and I am sorry for what has happened. And hopefully, the big thing is I really hope Riot does not get rid of the LCS and CBLOL branding, because I think that stuff is going to be instrumental to making sure that fans feel they're still connected to this stuff. And then one final shout out is to Damien and Amanda in their apartment, which apparently has a whole lot of people watching the show and the stream right now. They sent a video to me earlier, so a bunch of my friends are watching this. And if they don't hear me say this, then they're not watching, and I don't give them a shout out. Anyway, we'll see you all next Monday. I'm sure we're going to be continuing to talk about this stuff, but we will also be able to talk about LCS on that episode. Boy golly, I wish Riot would not constantly fuck up the beginning of their splits with these big announcements that just are about the future of LCS or some dramatic news or something. But I'll be covering LCS this weekend. I'll be there. Tune in on Saturday and Sunday. It's still around for at least this split. Bye.